last week, got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, drove all the way up to St. Ignace, crossed the Mighty Mac, and made it to court at 8:54. I signed in at the docket there at the court. And Rick Selva, the chairman of the Sheboygan County Republican Party, Tim Tarjeff, the vice chair, came to witness my arguments in front of the judge. I was prepared. I was loaded for bear. I had studied the laws, the no helmet law for motorcycles, the seatbelt law, the repeal of the helmet law. I had reports from the CDC. I had my 14th Amendment constitutional argument all prepared, ready to go, and the state trooper didn't show up. And as a result, the clerk at the court came out with a piece of paper, and she said about 9:30, Mr. Bishop, the state trooper didn't show up for court this morning, so your case has been dismissed. And I was ticked off, Ian. I was so mad because I was ready, loaded for bear to make my argument, and I didn't get the opportunity my day in court. And it reminded me very much of your scenario where the state has been jerking you around for years and things happen and all of a sudden cases are getting dismissed and things are getting thrown out. Your arguments aren't able to be presented. And more importantly, other cases in the state of Michigan tying into your case. And I said, you know, Ian motivated me to stand up and fight the fight like he's been, even though mine was a stupid seatbelt ticket violation on Labor Day in downtown St. Ignace when I was doing 22 miles an hour. But the point of the matter was, this process is, I have determined, is a game. This is a game because the fine was gone to, and I found out and had this documented as well, the revenue for those tickets go to the judge's retirement fund and public libraries. And it was so amazing to me that magically this trooper, he had, I'm sure, other things better to do on his day off as opposed to come and argue and debate with me in front of a judge. But the point of the matter is, we stand up for our rights like you're doing at the Iron Pig and take a lot of heat, a lot of time. I mean, the amount of hours that I put into researching my argument and presenting my case, I mean, I had like probably 10, 12 clock hours into the research, printing of the documents. I had a folder with me that had, I think, like 20 pages of paper in it. And I can only imagine the amount of papers that you and your attorney have had to do over your battle. And it just was, I felt good about the victory, but I was disappointed about having my day in court. Can you relate to that?
I absolutely can relate to that. You know, when the health department gave up their fight against us because they appealed our appeal win, right? So they went to this Court of Appeals to try and have Judge Hunter's ruling overturned, but then they immediately jumped over that to go to the Michigan Supreme Court to have them look at that, our issue, since we had won. And then this other case from T&V comes along. They get a ruling that they like, the state does. So they say, oh, Iron Pig, we don't need to fight that anymore. We're going to go ahead and give that up. And just like you, we wanted to actually present our arguments because it was more than just about the health law. It was about more of these similar laws that Judge Hunter had pointed out in his brief giving us our win. So we actually petitioned the Court of Appeals and the Michigan Supreme Court to deny the state's request to remove the appeal from the docket. We said, no, we actually don't want them to give up this appeal. Let them keep coming after us so we can put these arguments on the record. And I know that's exactly what you wanted to do. And I'd be actually curious on the statistics for your particular case, how many people fight those seatbelt tickets? Therefore, in turn, how many times does the quote arresting officer show up in court? I would have to say not many people fight these tickets, right? Where the money goes to the judges fund and the libraries.
Yep.
I don't have necessarily a problem with the libraries, but the judges fund, that seems a little ludicrous. But
conflict of interest.
a little, you think so? Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, I completely understand, yeah, you felt great about not having to deal with this anymore, but you were so geared up to actually give a legitimate argument against some of this nonsense that is going on, like a seatbelt ticket or like the new can't be holding your cell phone while driving law, that kind of stuff. I think it's all the same to me. And it is, you're right. It is just an excuse for them to intrude into your private life, inside your vehicle. These are, like I said, the tinted windows thing and some of those other absurd things that allow police officers to pull you over and then investigate further.
Yeah, absolutely. And refresh our memory. What was the decision by the courts when you said, no, we want our day in court? I don't remember the process. What did you have to go through at that point?
So really what had happened is nearly a year, 2 years after they had filed this whole thing with us, they almost on the exact same date, they gave up their appeal. And it's just simply a note that they send to the Court of Appeals that says we are withdrawing our appeal. Now, we couldn't find any precedent for the Court of Appeals to stand on to say you shouldn't allow the removal of this appeal. Almost every party that is involved in an appeal, when the appealing party gives up the appeal, nobody fights that, right? We're kind of crazy people that we wanted this appeal to continue, even though we had already won. That's what some people couldn't understand, is we wanted to introduce an even better argument that was made in front of Judge Hunter. We wanted to introduce at the Court of Appeals and or the Michigan Supreme Court. And we still may get to do that with this T&V Associates case that's headed to the Supreme Court.
Now, does that court case, I believe you said T&V?
Yes.
Because of it going to the Supreme Court, does that then give you more justification, legal precedent is what they call it, to then have your case continue on and allow you to present your arguments because of that particular case? I mean, are they basically tie-barred together?
They're not. They can. The Supremes could decide to take our case that was given up on appeal and the T&V and bind them together. I think we have maybe petitioned them to do so. But the Court of Appeals lower ruling with T&V was published, saying that the Health Code 2253 was unconstitutional. So that affirms our win in the separate court of equality there. So there's published precedents now. If it goes one step further up to the Michigan Supreme Court and they affirm that lower court ruling, that's even stronger precedent. So what we then plan to do is go back, get my fines back, get my record cleaned up, get my liquor license violations removed, and then we take that step to the class action lawsuit, because then we have some very serious foundational precedents for all of us to stand on, saying, listen, 2253, limiting the gathering of people for any purpose by the state director was wrong, and you're now going to pay. That's where this is all heading.
Right. And that's part of the NFT many of us have invested in to support your legal defense fund, so that we would all be part of that. Now, let me ask you at that point, do you see them being, once this goes through, because I believe, like you mentioned, the Michigan Supreme Court Justice, was it Bernstein and Viviano? They were wanting to hear your case.
Yes. So one from either side of the aisle wanted to hear our case, because they did think that it was very important to clarify exactly what was going on.
And in that process, does this also limit these bureaucratic agencies from their declaratory rulings, their overreaching non-elected officials passing rules? I learned this in the Constitution boot camp on Saturday in Elk Rapids.
Yes. So
they don't pass laws legislatively. They allow the bureaucrats to control our lives through these declaratory rulings, these rules, because you're not violating a law, you're violating a rule. Does that play into your lawsuit?
So that was the crux of the second step of arguments. That's why we fought the release of our appeal. That was the next argument that we wanted to make, was what we call our vesting clauses argument, which in the Michigan Constitution, it specifically states the judicial branch gets to judge the laws, right? Interpret the laws. The legislative branch writes the laws, and the executive branch enforces
signs the laws. Signs
Yes.
the laws and enforces.
Yes, enforces
Now,
them.
on that point, it is the bureaucratic departments that fall under the preview of the governor, the executive
Yes.
branch.
Yes. So our argument was a separation of powers violation, giving the vesting clauses argument where each one of those enumerates where it says vested. And nowhere in the Constitution says that you can divest the lawmaking or law writing ability to any other branch. And that is what has happened since March of 2020 is the executive branch was writing and enforcing the laws. That's the next step that we want to take with our lawsuit is to specifically identify that. And we saw that with the Michigan Supreme Court back in 2022 when the OSHA vaccine mandate was knocked down. The specific argument was made that the executive branch did not have the wherewithal to write this law. And that's what it was. And there have been several rulings since then that are coming out. There's an EPA ruling. There was Mayorkas in Arizona with some things that were going on. So the United States Supreme Court is heavily looking at the separation of powers arguments from the top, all the way at the top down. And that's exactly what we're saying here in Michigan, is that the executive branch has too much control with all of these executive branch agencies. And then the next conversation is about how much power they have with administrative law.
And the point of the matter is they're violating our state constitution and also implementing mandates. They call them mandates. They call them rules. They call them whatever. But actually, like you say, because of punishment, because of taking away licenses, because of charging fines and fees and court costs and all these other things, it basically has the full effect of law that you're violating, but when in fact it's not a law, it's a rule.
Right. And it's enforced by the executive branch, right? So when the police show up, that's the executive branch. You don't get to write the speed limit law and enforce the speed limit at the same time. You just don't get to do that in our country. That's one of the amazing things about our Constitution.
And, this, again, you gave me a backbone. You gave me the incentive to fight that ticket. And I want other people to understand that this is a process. It's not just the seatbelt law. It's not just the health department. It's not just basically you trying to keep your business open and help your employees feed their families and you feed yours. This is absolute an assault on our constitutional rights.
It is. I mean, as silly as it sounds, this is exactly why America is a thing now, right? When we left England, that's tyranny. The king got to make the law and enforce law and actually get to be the judge as well. We got away from that and created three separate but equal branches. And what is happening is they are diluting into each other, and one is usurping power from the other branch. It's that simple. We're getting back to the times of England and kings and queens where one person could write a law, put you in jail, and or kill you for that. That it sounds hyperbolic to say that.
Right.
That's the slow creep that we're getting to with these gigantic bureaucracies that the executive branch is creating.
Yes, exactly.
Continues to do it
Yep.
here in Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, we appreciate you so much. Keep fighting the good fight. Go to the Iron Pig and have a meal. Tell them Trucker Randy sent you. There's even a T-shirt for that. I love you, man.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Be in touch. We'll talk to you next week. Bottom of the hour news break. We'll be right back.